Web3 marketing is forever changing in 2025. Gone are the days where you have the ability to just spend your way into relevance through influencer marketing strategies. The future of Web3 marketing is based on building real and authentic connections with your community. This is the only way to overcome the cold start problem that every brand, startup, and project faces in Web3. Because fundamentally, these are going to be the first group of people that are going to become your users or your customers when the time is right. The case study you're going to be watching today is that of the most successful NFT project launch that the space has seen in the last 12 months, called Good Vibes Club. They've managed to raise over $1 million on their NFT sales without spending a single dollar on marketing, and have done so by setting a new standard on how to build authentic and real connections with your community. Tyler and Chris, the two co-founders, were part of a pilot incubator program that we had at Unfungible that was reserved for only 4 founding teams. And as part of what we did, we were helping them on the strategy during their go-to market. And Good Vibes Club joined the program midway through their go-to market. So having had the ability to see how they were moving on the space, how they were living and breathing all the things that you're going to be learning about in today's video was just fascinating to see. So I had to sit down with Tyler and turn that into knowledge that you can use. This video is going to be a hybrid from an interview that I had with Tyler, the co-founder of Good Vibes Club, where he discusses some of the things that they've done, and my analysis, breaking down what he shared into actionable steps that you can use. My guarantee is that whether you're launching an NFT project, a Web3 startup that is either launching a product or a token, or you already have a token on the market, the strategies you're going to be learning today are going to work for you. With that said, let's get into the first segment of the interview. Where most founders struggle with is building that initial core community of getting people to even hear about you. Like, we exist. Getting the we exist is the hardest part of the process in marketing.
Yep.
You guys didn't ride on any hype. There was no abstract hype. NFTs were at their lowest. How would you say you started building that core community of people and overcome the cold start problem? Like, what was the step-by-step process that you followed?
Yeah, totally. I think it starts with like, what community are we a part of, right? There's a couple NFT communities that, both Chris and I have been a part of that has a network already. But really the most important community that I think is oftentimes overlooked in the NFT space is the artist community. Like, artists support artists very well. And so for us, like a lot of our really close friends from Web2 that we worked with back in the years, they've gone on to have amazing careers in Web3, like DK and Jack and Gavin and all that stuff. And so, being partners with Super Rare as well, there's an amazing artist ecosystem. And so for us in building, like, it's really important to build your first 1,000 community members and really core supporters. And they need to align with who you are and what your vision represents. And so for us, we started with the communities that we were a part of, which is the artist community. And then from there branched out to the collectors within the artist community. And so a cold start is very difficult. It takes a couple things. It takes being present on the timeline. It takes intentional one-on-one relationship building with as many people as you possibly can. Like, if there's somebody who organically pops into your Discord that you can clearly see is there for the right reason and kind of is aligned with who you are as a project, then you need to go out of your way to get on a call with that person. And so dozens and dozens of calls, a lot of one-on-one conversations, DMs all the time.
The reason why what Tyler said is very important is at this point of the project, the project only had about 2,000 followers, and Tyler himself had only 400 followers on his personal brand. And this right here reflects the reality of a lot of founders starting from zero. Every brand has started from zero. And starting to gain that traction is oftentimes the cemetery of most Web3 brands, because you don't have the ability to attract people, you don't know how to, so you end up spending your way into doing it, only to burn all your marketing dollars in that very first stage, and you end up leaving dry without a real community, without a real base of people that are here for the right reasons. And what Tyler was talking about is actually a strategy that my business partner and I, Kermit, have been talking about since 2022, when founders would come to us through the YouTube channel and would ask for consulting. We no longer do this. Right now, literally all the knowledge is for you for free on here on YouTube. But we actually used to present this to people as one of the strategies that they needed to use during the process. And this was called the Alpha strategy. The Alpha strategy was inspired by what we call in the Web3 space Alpha calls, which is a marketing strategy where you have people that are part of multiple Discords call your project in these Discords, and all of a sudden you get a flood of people from all these other communities come to your project because you've been called. So you pretty much people are like, okay, let me check this out. Let me see if there's anything interesting there. The problem though with the Alpha calling strategy is that number one, it no longer works right now. Alpha calling was very popular when in the epitome, in the zenith of Alpha groups, when these were hot, people were looking for Alpha. But number two, and most importantly, the types of people you would get from Alpha groups were not typically the types of people that were there for the right reasons. These were people that were very money oriented, which by the way, everyone in Web3 is, but these were typically the types of people that wanted to get in quickly and get out quickly out of a project. They weren't there for the community. They weren't a very good way to segment the real type of buyer persona that you want to go after. It's like you're just shooting a shotgun and trying to hit as many people as possible through Alpha calling. So we came up with an alternative called the Alpha strategy. And this one was built on the Alpha being the main Alpha caller of the project. And the way this was done was by actually being part of existing communities in Web3, buying yourself a couple blue chip NFTs. Trust me, if you put together a small budget of, let's say $5,000. With $5,000, you pretty much have an in on some of the biggest communities. And through that, are gonna have the ability to start networking with other people who have a buyer persona or a community profile that is very similar to that of the project that you are building. If you're building an IP brand, let's say you're innovating in the IP space, all of a sudden joining the biggest IP communities out there on the internet, becoming a leader within that community, networking with others, you know that these are the types of people that are in that project for the right reasons because they appreciate IP. So they're going to appreciate by default, by extension, they're going to be the types of people that are going to resonate with the project that you are building, that you're presenting in front of them. And really at the core, the Alpha strategy is designed to help build the initial couple dozens or couple hundred people that are here to support your project. They're part of your group, they're part of your Discord, they've joined your community, they're following you, they're staying up to date. You have the ability to text these people, ask them for feedback, send them your posts if you have an important post coming up and you need some amplification. And the deeper reason why I like this from a marketing psychology is when launching your project, this is something that I've actually learned from this book that I'm currently reading called Predictably Irrational. Great book. I'm probably halfway through it right now as we speak. So right here, great book. And one of the things the book talk about is as humans, we typically operate in two distinct realities at the same time. The first one is we operate under what is called social norms. Social norms. The second reality that we as humans operate in is what is called market norms. So what is the difference, you might ask, and how does this apply to us right here? So social norms is that side of us as humans, how we interact with our loved ones, our friends and family. When you help your neighbor move their couch, you're doing them a favor. You don't expect any form of payment, and you definitely don't expect them to come back the next day to help you move your own couch. You're doing a favor. It's philanthropic. While market norms are built on the more transactional way of doing business. Think about it that way when you go have lunch, great lunch at your parents' place, to thank them for the hospitality, you brought in your kids or your partner, to thank your parents for the hospitality, you can bring a bouquet of flowers, you can bring a bottle, you can just show up with desserts, whatever that looks like. That falls under social norms. You don't go to your parents' house and bring a couple of dollar bills with you. Like, oh, mom, thank you. This was like, I think $300 is enough, right? To cover the fee for two people. No, you'd get kicked out outside forever. This is a transaction reserved for market norms. The nice thing about the alpha strategy, or as Tyler was talking about it, building relationships with that initial core of people before the project launching, is you are all of a sudden in the realm of market norms, of social norms, apologies. That's where people want to support you because it's like, this guy Tyler, I really liked, he sounded really smart, really sharp. I love his vision, I want to support him. You're getting people's buy-in and people's support through the social norms, which are very prevalent in Web3, which are the bigger way brands are launched. Market norms is the type of brands that just want to come in, let's spend on marketing and let's get return. There is limitations to that. Obviously, you can scale using market norms, but the cold start problem, unless you're operating on a big marketing budget, social norms is the way to do it. Let's move on.
Cold starting and launching an NFT project is incredibly difficult. Like, we're essentially launching a new brand in a new arena. Obviously we've been in the Web 2 space for a while, and I, build crypto product at Reddit. So and we've been in Web 3 ourselves just as people for a while, but cold starting a brand in Web 3 is a very different thing. And so, for us, specifically seeking out relationships with people who, understood the space very well from more of a high level perspective was really, really important. And that's where we focused a lot of our energy early. And then it was like, okay, we're a high-end art IP. This is what our collection represents and our community and our brand represents. What other communities are like that? And then, those types of people could most likely be drawn towards the art, right? And so that's kind of how we thought about it.
Beautiful. Okay. So how did you activate these people from an early stage to help you overcome the cold start problem? Like, what is the bridge between the early group to one to few?
As we were sort of relationship building and focusing on BD, on more of the partner level, we were also focusing, on the community level, right? Your allocation is the biggest lever that you have, right? Like how you plan to allocate it. And so for us, we didn't really do alpha call, communities. It was 98% collector communities. And if you look at our whitelist allocation, it's weighted in that way. We have a ton of spots to the grifters, Xcopy, obviously a huge super artist, the Pudgy groups, the Doodles groups, Azuki, etc. But the pledge, for example, the entire basis of that community is pledging to not, is to collect and not sell your stuff. And so we gave a lot of spots to them. And so, in terms of our whitelist allocation, that's a great lever to begin building relationships with the, collab managers and then other people within the community to then, run whitelist spots or whatever. And then there it starts to build. And so it's really being, articulate around who is your core community, what do you represent, and how do you build around that by relationship building with other communities and sort of distributing your allocation. And so that's kind of how we started it.
How did you start kicking off the more public phase of the marketing? What did that look like?
Yeah, so for us, our biggest advantage is the quality of the art, right? We spent over 3 years working on the collection itself. And so, everybody that joined our team happened organically.
The reason why what Tyler was saying right here is important is curating your community is one of the most overlooked aspects of Web3 marketing. And fundamentally, you can break down the types of buyer personas that exist in Web3 into 3 different buckets. And these are going to be one of the three types of people that you're going to want to attract in your project, because each of these archetypes resonate with different types of projects. So right here we have the 3 types of buyers. The first type of buyer persona is what we call the X collector. The X collector, the letter X comes from, typically, for most of history, these were Gen X, a little bit older people. And collector is the reason why they are even in Web3. Think of these as your punk holders, your Fidenza holders, the types of people that are buying into Pudgy Penguin for the collectability that comes with it, and not necessarily the monetary value that they could make. Just like any art collector, it's great to know that your art piece can accrue in value over time, but that is not the main reason why they are into that. They're into it for the symbolic significance of what their asset means, and oftentimes the status that they get from being part of these communities or having access to that group of people. The second type of persona is what we call Finny. That's a beautiful Y, by the way, right here. But Finny is, you want to think of Finny as your smart money. Fin stands for fintech. We've noticed that this type of persona typically used to or currently works in financial services. They work in consulting companies, they work in banks. They are money driven in the sense of how they do things. They think as investors when they are buying into brands. And Y stands for Gen Y. So these are a little bit older people. They have more capital. They have the ability to make bigger bets. And think of Finny as the type of person that looks at projects like investment opportunities. These are the types of people who you are going to need more convincing, but once you have the ability to convince them, they're all of a sudden part of your project for the long term. Because again, these people are not day trading. They're not here to flip for a 0.05 Ethereum profit. They're here to buy long term because they believe in the vision. You can make the argument that a lot of Pudgy Penguin is made up of Finny holders, the types of people who have bought and held through the ups and the downs. So Finny is more long-term money oriented. They think as investors and want to understand who the team behind the project is, what the roadmap is, how much funding do you have, and where are you when it comes to the product that you've already built? Is it just an idea phase, or do you already have a prototype ready to launch? And then finally, we have our notorious Z Money. And Z Money, these are your degens. These are Z generation, Z younger people. Money, that's what they're here for. That's what they are. That's the reason they are in the Web3 space. And Z Money is very hype driven. These are the types of people who are going to buy into meme coin and then flip it 20 minutes after for 1.2x profit. Going back to what we were talking about earlier about the alpha callers, when alpha calling was a popular marketing strategy, a lot of what we would get was Z Money. It was the types of people that would, let me find the next flip that I can make. Because truth be told, Finny will not click on any link that they see on a Discord by a random caller or the mod in the community just to get in quick. And Z Money pretty much follows the hype. They follow what is popular. They were in NFTs in 21, 22, then they went into meme coins in 24, 25. These are the types of people that will move with wherever the hype is. And it's very important for you to understand which of these three personas is your project appealing to. Fundamentally, there are projects that are naturally more appealing to the Z, the X collectors, or frankly to the Z Money. There's nothing wrong about Z Money. They are a buyer persona. We've seen brands become incredibly successful by having a consumer base that is Z Money focused. But it's important for you to know who of these personas does your product resonate for. If you're building a startup with a roadmap that has a long-term plan and you're building something serious with like big goals, you're probably right here. But if you're a collector, you're more of an art style, you want people to buy into the vision and the mission of the project, and perhaps you're with X collectors. The next question that you have might be, how do I know which of these three buyer personas are the people I'm getting? How do I know? And I'm glad you asked, because there are three ways to know. There is the easy way, there is the manual way, and then there is the hard way. And each comes with its own pros and cons. The easy way of doing this is what Tyler was talking about during our interview, which is already being part of these communities and building these relationships, or just inviting your friends and buddies into your project. It's a very reputation-driven way of doing business. You know through this person's behavior on the internet, what they're following, what they're tweeting about. Oh, you know what? This is the type of person that I want to have as part of my project. That's the easy way. The manual way, and this is when you really start getting to the point where your project has a liftoff and you start getting people inbound without you knowing, like, where the hell are these people coming from? The manual way is when people apply for your project on your whitelist application, or at some point you're going to have to ask for people's wallet. You can check that manually on Etherscan or wherever chain you're in. And through that, are going to have the ability to see, you can literally see it on the blockchain. Does that person flip 30 minutes after getting an airdrop? Do they hold? Have they held their NFTs for a couple months now? So you can manually see this. So when in doubt about a certain person, ooh, I'm not too sure this person, they seem cool, but I don't know, manual. The hard way, which is the more scalable way, and we've seen this become pretty popular right now, is actually by building a database or a tool that allows AI or algorithms to analyze your whitelist base. So who's applying? And you have the ability to give these wallets a score based on what is it you value. Let's say you get a list of 1,000 wallets. Wallets that have over $1,000 in them, that's a bonus. Wallets that have held NFTs, that's a bonus. Wallets that flip very quickly, that's a negative. So you can start ranking. And this is where we've seen the whole application meta, especially on Avalanche. A lot of them were launched using the hard way. A lot of this is you having to build your custom solution. It'll probably cost you between $10,000 to $20,000. Would not recommend it for everyone. One thing I'd love to know is if there was a solution out there in the market that allowed you to just upload your list and get the results. Would that be interesting for you? And just collecting feedback for potentially something that we're working on. Still too early. But with that said, this is how you have the ability to, number one, start tailoring your marketing to the buyer persona that resonates most with you. And then you have the ability to start checking which buyer persona resonates with your project.
It was like those people kind of found us and those conversations organically evolved. And so a key piece to our content was when we got connected with Zane, who ran content for Claynosaurs. I worked at Mr. Beast. He was early at VeeFriends, launched VeeFriends V1. And so in terms of like a content brain, we had all the ingredients, but what we needed to figure out was how to put it together into a really delicious meal. And so Zane came on and really helped like define our content strategy in terms of, okay, how do we communicate the core like pillars of the brand, which is like quality, and all of these different things. And so and then we started to formulate a content plan around it. And then from there, it's just about being consistent.
I made a short form video about this in 2022, and I was talking about the 3 types of innovations that you need. So the 3 types of innovations as part of your project to stand out in the marketplace. The first of these innovations is what is called a branding innovation. The second is a tech innovation. And then we have a business model innovation. So what do these mean? As a project, you should strive to have one of these 3, if not a multitude of them. And it's only by having these that you're going to be able to stand out in the crowded marketplace. First mover's advantage is real in Web3. You're either first or you're first last. So branding innovations is pretty much when you have the ability to come in with a new way of communicating your message, a new way of presenting your product. For Good Vibes Club specifically, one of the things that really set them apart is just the quality of their art. The art was created by, a big part of it was by Chris, the co-founder, who has decades of experience in animation, in graphic design, and has worked on some pretty notable projects. So for them, the space, I remember seeing tweets on the timeline, people saying how man, we haven't seen a good 3D art in ages now, in years. So they came in and injected a fresh breath of air in a meta that was attributed to rug projects. If you don't remember, in 22, every 3D project ending badly. But Good Vibes Club revived the 3D art meta. So that's a branding innovation that they had. A technological innovation is when you have the ability to show the world that your project is better than anything else that exists out there from a technology standpoint. Think of Azuki when they launched the ERC 721A. It was pretty much a gas optimized contract where you could mint NFTs for pretty much no gas. And this proved right here when they released this, it proved Azuki had these two, so branding and technological. And that's how they were able to gain top 3 spot in the NFT space like instantly. Same fundamentals, same psychology, hasn't changed. We're 3 years after, the same fundamentals apply today. So all of a sudden they created a new standard of technology. There's this brand that caught a lot of traction on the timeline. They're called Mega ETH, an up and coming chain. And what they're leaning into is the technological innovation that they have. It's pretty much they've advertised that they can do 100,000 transactions per second. And what's really nice about their website is that they also have a nice little branding innovation within how they're presenting what would be a very complicated way of showing, like, we're just very fast. How do you show people what looks like a complex blockchain? Simplify it. And they did a very good job by simplifying that to people. And that's a big reason why they stood out in probably the most competitive time to be launching a chain. And then business model innovation is when you have the ability to come in and take something that we are already very used to and do something new with it. An example of a business model innovation was Pudgy Penguin going from an NFT project into a consumer product. They were the first to show how an NFT project could all of a sudden become a consumer mass product without having it rely with wallet connections and gas fees and everything. That's a business model innovation right here. They're also doing that with Abstract as we speak. So with Abstract, they're building a chain, but they're focusing their chain on the consumer crypto. So their goal, their long-term vision is to become the consumer crypto chain where all of a sudden you have the ability, brands have the ability to sponsor gas fees. People can literally, if you guys have used the Abstract Global Wallet, you could just sign transactions with your fingerprint, like amazing. That's a business model innovation. It also checks on branding depending how you want to see it, but that's a business model innovation. So for you, for your project, which of these three do you have? And then lean all the way into it. And this is what Tyler says, find your one strength and then just keep hitting on it. Keep showing how great of the art you have, what it took, the behind the scenes of creating it, highlight the experience that your artists have, like just go all in on this one innovation that you have.
I think that was like a really defining moment in our go-to-market is really getting a lot more intentional. And credit to Zane because he's incredibly talented at how to frame content. And so that really changed the game for us. And then from there, it wasn't initial. It was a consistency, show up every day.
If you notice so far, a big reason why people bought into Good Vibes Club in the first place was because of who Tyler and Chris were. People saw them, people heard them, people joined their Twitter spaces. They're like, I like this person. I like this guy. They were able to overcome the cold start problem of a project that had no audience at the beginning. They had no advantages to be successful versus any other founder. One of the things they leaned on is relationship building with their community through the founder funnel. They use the founder funnel to highlight who they are as founders, show the world that we can be trusted. And the founder funnel, fundamentally, is the most important step in building a thriving community. You are going to be the thing that keeps the community together as the founder.
What it really is a movement of authentic connection. And so, we're all in Discords and communities and whatnot, but we like connecting with other people and really feeling that human relationship. So creating a space for that within the community is important, but also as a founder, it's how do you walk that walk? Like, what does that look like, and how you use your own rhetoric on the timeline? And so it's how you intentionally connect with someone one-on-one when you see something you like on the timeline that maybe you never met. And so that's a really important piece of it. And it's hard because it's like very time consuming, but you have to do it. And it's the only way, and it's the right way.
Very nice. Okay. So building the core community, focalizing and magnifying your core strength through proper communication. When you were doing this at the beginning, how many impressions were your typical post getting?
Main account, a couple thousand. And then it's like, okay, it slowly climbs to like 7,000, 8,000, 15,000, 20,000, 50,000, 100,000. And so like over time that happens, but it's not immediate.
How did it happen?
It happens due to consistency. Like it's kind of like it's almost like a bell curve. Like it's really hard to get your first 1,000, but then if you focus on building relationships genuinely, like think about the best clubs that you've ever been a part of. You love it for some impassioned reason, and you have friends that are like you because they're your friends, right? You're attracted to people who are like you, and you want them to experience what you love as well. So we really tapped into that idea in terms of, okay, how do we build something organic? It's attract those core people and let them bring their friends into the mix. And so at a certain point, numerically, that snowballs. And so then their friends start seeing things on the timeline because they're sharing our content, and then your community grows. But it's that first 1,000 that's really difficult. That just takes one-on-one conversation with you, the founder, because they need to connect and really understand what you're building in order to feel that connection and investment emotionally into the idea.
Have you, as part of your amplification, what would you say 80-20, so the Pareto principle, 20% of things you did that led to 80%. Would you say some of that was influencer campaigns, collaborations, just raw organic posting?
It's because of the one-on-one relationship building and community building that you do for months. Because if people feel a part of something and they feel like a sense of pride and ownership over it, over being a part of the community, over this idea that you represent as a project, then they show up for you. We minted out because of that. Like that, there was no other reason. There was not like this incredible cascade of retail FOMO. We didn't lean into like alpha caller strategy. Like that's just not what we did in terms of our go-to-market. We minted out because of our impassioned community and the people that were really bought into this concept of genuine authenticity and being like authentic people that know how to build the right way because we have that experience. And so that's what happened.
Very nice. Beautiful. So I have 3 points here that I would love to discuss. There's a point throughout the marketing where you switch from one-on-one, which based on what you're saying was the catalyst of your success. Shifting from that one-on-one to that one-to-many, where you get to the point where it's not scalable to have conversations with every person that is whitelisted. The most fascinating part is that Good Vibes Club minted on the worst day of sentiment on crypto Twitter in years. If you look at CoinMarketCap, the bottom of the sentiment, that was the day of Good Vibes Club's mint. I'm sure as you've seen from Tyler, how he was sharing how they did it. It was all about just building and scaling relationship building, being there as a figure for your community, doing the unscalable. Man, I've seen Chris and Tyler, these guys were hopping on hundreds of hours of calls with community members, bringing people in, welcoming them. Man, I saw people posting screenshots on the timeline of Tyler checking in with them because the person was in LA during the fires. And just that, man, reaching out to people, being a human, treating people as humans, not as customers. That's how community is built. It's by giving people a place where they feel cared for and a place that they enjoy being in. That's what it looks like. This right here is the future of Web3 marketing. This right here is how you have the ability to create a base of customers that are going to be there forever. You bet that that person in LA who got reached out by Tyler, that's going to be a forever fan of the community. And they're not only going to keep their NFTs, they're going to buy more, and they're going to talk to their friends about it, and they're going to support Good Vibes Club on the timeline. You all of a sudden have the ability to multiply your efforts by going the community building route. As a good friend of mine once told me when I was transitioning from Web2 marketing into Web3 marketing in 2021, I went to his house. He's a very, very successful Solana founder. And he told me, he was like, Leon, one of the big differences in what you were doing in Web2 marketing versus what you're about to enter is that in Web3, 1 + 1 = 11. And this +1 + 1 are your community members. When you build a community of people, you multiply your results 10x in the back. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope this video was helpful. If we're not connected on X, my username is @LeonAboud_. Make sure you send me a DM letting me know you came from YouTube. Always love connecting with fellow watchers, and I shall see you in the very next video. Cheers.